The sound of sirens sliced through the quiet afternoon, sharp and jarring, like a blade tearing through calm water. I stood on my own porch, hands slightly raised, as two police officers approached with cautious steps, their fingers hovering close to their holsters. Down by the curb, a woman with a stiff bob haircut and an HOA badge pinned to her navy blazer was pointing at me with all the fervor of a courtroom accuser. "That's him," she screeched, her voice so shrill it could strip paint off a wall. "He's trespassing on association property. I told him to leave and he refused." I took a measured breath, forcing my tone to stay calm and even. "Officers, I'm standing on my own property," I said steadily. "I have the deed right here in my back pocket, if you'll allow me to retrieve it." The lead officer gave a cautious nod. Slowly, I reached for the worn document and unfolded it. I couldn't help but smile a little to myself. What this woman didn't realize was that in exactly 6 minutes, her entire precious HOA would be served a court-ordered shutdown notice. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's David Hartley, and after 12 long years overseas as a real estate attorney specializing in property law, I'd finally come home to my grandfather's old lakeside cabin on Pine Ridge Lake. The place was more than just wood and nails. It was childhood summers, fishing at dawn, the smell of campfire smoke, and my grandfather's old stories echoing in the dark. Time, however, hadn't been kind. Nature had reclaimed most of it. Vines tangled across the cedar siding, and the dock looked like it was one storm away from collapse. That morning, I'd arrived ready to take stock of the damage and start restoring what was left. The cabin sat on 5 acres of prime lakefront property that had been in my family since 1947. But what I hadn't expected was that during my time abroad, some overzealous Homeowners Association had sprung up around the lake like an invasive weed. The first sign of trouble came within an hour of my return. I was clearing branches from the front steps when a golf cart rolled up my gravel driveway. Behind the wheel sat a woman whose expression looked like she'd been sucking lemons since sunrise. Her HOA president badge caught the light like a sheriff's star. "Excuse me," she said sharply, her tone making it sound more like an accusation than a question. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I straightened, brushing the dirt off my jeans. "Cleaning up my property. Can I help you?" Her eyes narrowed. "Your property? This entire lakefront falls under Pine Ridge HOA jurisdiction. No one told me about any new owners, and I certainly didn't approve any work permits." I blinked at her, then chuckled. "Work permits? To sweep my own steps? Don't get smart with me," she snapped, gripping her clipboard like a weapon. "I'm Patricia Peaton, president of the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association. Nothing happens around here without my knowledge or approval." Despite her tone, I kept my voice light. "Well, Patricia, I'm David Hartley. My family's owned this cabin since before you were probably born. I don't need anyone's permission to fix up my own place." Her face flushed a deep shade of purple. "That's impossible. The HOA owns all lakefront access rights. We've been maintaining these properties for years." I looked around at the overgrown weeds, the fallen branches, and the dock sagging into the water. "Interesting definition of maintenance you've got there." Patricia's nostrils flared. She shoved the clipboard toward me. "You violate at least 17 HOA bylaws: unauthorized presence, unapproved modifications, failure to register with the Architectural Committee." I raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Patricia, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My property predates your HOA by several decades. I have the original deed and trust documents. Whatever authority you think you have ends right at my property line." She let out a sharp, condescending laugh. "Oh, one of those sovereign citizen types, are you? Let me educate you, Mr. Hartley. The Pine Ridge HOA was established in 2013 with full authority over all lakefront properties. Your so-called deed means nothing." I pulled out my phone and showed her a clear photo of the deed I'd taken earlier that morning. "This deed is from 1947. Unless your HOA has a time machine, I think my claim supersedes yours." Her expression twisted into fury. That's fraud! You're showing me forged documents. You're just a squatter trying to steal association property." And just like that, the situation spiraled. Patricia stomped back to her golf cart, shouting into her phone as she went. Within minutes, blinds across the street began to twitch, and curious faces peeked out from behind curtains. I sighed and went back to cleaning, fully aware that this wasn't over. 20 minutes later, she returned with backup. 3 other HOA board members followed her, all dressed in matching blazers with gleaming HOA pins. They looked less like community volunteers and more like a suburban firing squad. "Mr. Hartley," Patricia announced dramatically, "the board has convened an emergency session. You have 5 minutes to vacate this property before we contact the authorities." I leaned casually against the porch railing, unbothered. "Patricia, I already showed you my deed. This is my property. If you want to verify it, the county records office is open until 5. "I don't need to verify anything," she shrieked, her composure cracking. "I know every inch of this HOA. You're trespassing and dangerous. Who knows what you're plotting in that cabin?" One of the board members, a timid man with thinning hair, tugged nervously at her sleeve. "Maybe we should check the records first, Patricia." She turned on him like a viper. "Harold, whose side are you on? Can't you see? He's dangerous. Just look at him, standing there with that smug expression. He could be planning anything." For the record, I wasn't smirking, but I'll admit the absurdity of it all made me want to laugh. I was a middle-aged attorney in khakis and a polo, somehow cast as the villain of her suburban soap opera. "Patricia," I said evenly, "I'm going inside now to make some coffee. You can call whoever you'd like, but I'm not leaving my own property." That's when she completely lost it. As I turned to step inside, her voice cut through the air. 911! Yes, this is an emergency. There's a dangerous man who broke into a house on Pine Ridge Lake. He's refusing to leave. He's making threats. I stopped at my door, exhaling in disbelief. Threats? The only thing I'd threatened was her ego. Still, I knew the police would take a report like that seriously. I went inside, grabbed my deed and supporting documents, and waited. 10 minutes later, the sirens arrived. 2 patrol cars pulled into my driveway, lights flashing, engines humming low. Patricia was practically vibrating with triumph as she pointed me out. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she wailed. "This man broke into this cabin. He's been hostile and threatening. I fear for my safety and for our community." The lead officer, a composed woman with sharp eyes, stepped forward. Her badge read Officer Chen. "Sir," she said firmly, "I need you to step away from the door and keep your hands visible." I did exactly as told, my movements slow and deliberate. "Officer," I began calmly, "I understand you have to respond to the call, but I'm the legal owner of this property. I have documentation right here. He's lying!" Patricia shrieked again. "He showed me fake papers. He's a con artist." Officer Chen raised a hand, her voice steady and professional. "Ma'am, please, let's allow him to speak." And that's when things finally started to get interesting. "Ma'am, please step back and let us handle this," Officer Chen said firmly, gesturing for Patricia to move aside. Then she turned to me. "Sir, can you provide identification?" "Of course," I replied, handing over my driver's license and the folded deed. She examined both closely while her partner kept a careful eye on the situation. After a few moments, she spoke quietly into her radio, likely running my information. Minutes passed. Then she looked back at me. "Mr. Hartley," she said, "this deed appears to be legitimate and your record's clean. No warrants, no issues. Can you tell me what's going on here?" I explained everything calmly, the golf cart, the confrontation, the absurd claim that my grandfather's land somehow fell under HOA control. My tone stayed even, factual, while Patricia grew more and more agitated by the second. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "I've been president of this HOA for 8 years. I know every homeowner in Pine Ridge. He's not one of them." Officer Chen turned toward her with polite professionalism. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation proving the HOA owns this particular property?" Patricia blinked, caught off guard. "Well, not on me," she stammered, fumbling with her clipboard. "But it's in our files." "Every lakefront property is part of the association." "That may be," Officer Chen said carefully. "But this deed predates your HOA by several decades. Unless you have official documentation showing transfer of ownership, Mr. Hartley appears to be within his rights." Patricia's face cycled from red to purple in disbelief. "This is preposterous. I want him arrested for trespassing." "Ma'am," Officer Chen's partner cut in, his voice cool and steady, "filing a false police report is a criminal offense. This man has proven ownership. If anyone's trespassing, it might be you." Patricia froze. Her mouth opened, then closed again without sound. That was my cue. While she sputtered in outrage, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, dialing a number I'd had ready since the moment her golf cart came up the drive. "Tom," I said, "it's David Hartley. I'm at the cabin, and we've got an HOA here claiming jurisdiction over trust land. Remember that clause we discussed? Yeah, it's time to activate it." Patricia stopped mid-tirade, glaring at me. "Who are you calling? What are you doing?" I held up a finger, keeping my voice calm. "Yes, Tom, file the emergency injunction immediately, and make sure to include the fraud investigation request." I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my pocket, giving the officers a polite nod to the officers. Patricia stared at me like she was watching a grenade with the pin pulled. The board members behind her shifted uneasily. "Officers," I said pleasantly, "I'm sorry your time was wasted today. I assure you there won't be any more false reports about my property." Officer Chen nodded, professional but slightly amused. "We'll be filing a report about this false 911 call. Ma'am," she added, turning to Patricia, "I strongly suggest you refrain from harassing Mr. Hartley further." As the officers prepared to leave, Patricia's phone buzzed. Then Harold's phone buzzed. Then another. Within seconds, all 4 HOA board members were staring down at their screens, faces draining of color. What is this?" Harold whispered. Patricia's hands trembled as she read aloud. "Cease. Emergency injunction. Dissolution of charter. No, this can't be real." I checked my watch. 6 minutes. "Tom's getting faster," I said with a small smile. Patricia rounded on me, her voice climbing to glass-shattering pitch. "What did you do?" I leaned casually against the porch post, finally allowing the smirk she'd accused me of earlier. "What you and your HOA didn't realize, Patricia," I said evenly, "is that I'm not just another property owner. I'm a real estate attorney, specializing in property law and trust management. My grandfather didn't just own this cabin. He was one of the founders of the original Pine Ridge Land Trust, established in 1947. Patricia's jaw dropped. "The what?" "That trust," I continued, "contains very specific clauses about land use, development, and, interestingly enough, association formation. Any HOA claiming jurisdiction over trust properties without proper approval is automatically null and void." The blood drained from her face. "But the part I find most fascinating," I added with a grin, "is the fraud clause." Fraud?" Harold squeaked. "Oh, yes," I said cheerfully. "See, I stopped by the county records office this morning. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that your HOA has been collecting dues and issuing fines on properties it doesn't legally control. Turns out about 60% of your so-called jurisdiction overlaps with trust land." Patricia's phone rang again. She answered, voice shaking. "Hello? What?" No, that's impossible. We can't be shut down. I'm the president." "What do you mean the city is investigating? An audit? Criminal charges?" Her voice trailed off into stunned silence. The other board members instinctively stepped away from her as if she might explode. "It seems," I said conversationally to the group, "that claiming ownership of property you don't legally control, collecting money under false pretenses, and filing fraudulent documents with the city, well, that tends to get people's attention." Within the hour, the neighborhood was buzzing. Word spread faster than wildfire. Homeowners came pouring out of their houses, waving their phones, reading the same emergency notices. The Pine Ridge HOA was finished, completely and permanently. The scene was almost festive. One elderly man danced on his lawn as he ripped down a sign listing approved paint colors. A young couple hugged and laughed, realizing they could finally build the playground Patricia had denied them 3 times. Others tore down HOA notices like they were breaking free from prison walls. Meanwhile, Patricia stood in my driveway, shell-shocked. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, board members resigning, the HOA's lawyer withdrawing representation, the city inspector calling to collect documents for evidence. Her voice came out as a whisper. $73,000. She stared at the screen, eyes wide. "They say I owe $73,000 in illegally collected dues." Harold, looking both nervous and liberated, spoke up. "Patricia, at the last board meeting, didn't you transfer $40,000 from the HOA account to renovate your pool?" She spun on him, fury flashing for a moment before it faded into despair. "That was for HOA gatherings." "We never had gatherings," another board member said dryly. "You told us the pool was the unofficial headquarters, but it's on your personal property." The city inspector, who had arrived by then, scribbled something in his notebook. "Embezzlement charges, too," he said matter-of-factly. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with me to answer a few questions." Patricia's shoulders slumped. The polished, commanding HOA president was gone, replaced by someone small and defeated. As she was led toward the waiting car, she turned to glare at me one last time. "You destroyed everything!" she shouted. I shook my head slowly. "No, Patricia. You destroyed it. I just showed everyone the truth." The fallout came quickly. Within days, Patricia was charged with fraud, embezzlement, and filing false reports. The total of the illegal dues alone exceeded $200,000. With legal fees and restitution, bankruptcy was inevitable. Investigators confirmed that the $40,000 pool renovation had been entirely personal, sealing her fate on the embezzlement count. She was expelled from every local organization she'd joined, and her real estate firm fired her when they learned she'd used company resources for her HOA schemes. The criminal charges carried a potential 5-year sentence. When she stood before the judge for arraignment, pale and trembling, he read the charges aloud. Fraud, embezzlement, false reporting, and abuse of authority, and right there in open court, the infamous Patricia Peaton, queen of the HOA, fainted dead away. Her perfect bob finally out of place, paramedics revived her with smelling salts as the courtroom watched in silence. For the first time, Pine Ridge Lake was finally, truly free.